Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most astonishing, mind-bending, and conversation-starting stories in the entire world of modern coin collecting, a story that pulls you right in and keeps you hooked from the very first moment as we explore how a seemingly ordinary 1989 D-quarter dollar could end up being valued at a jaw-dropping $16 million because of the rare, unusual, unexpected, and almost unbelievable errors and production anomalies that have turned this particular coin into one of the most desirable and speculative treasures in the history of numismatics, pulling collectors, investors, hobbyists, and even curious newcomers into a whirlwind of mystery, excitement, research, and imagination as they try to understand how a coin minted in such massive quantities could possibly achieve a value that seems almost unreal, yet becomes more and more believable the deeper we go into the hidden mistakes, minting oddities, striking abnormalities, planchet irregularities, die deterioration, over-polishing mishaps, misalignments, doubling effects, striking pressure inconsistencies, and other rare possibilities that could have occurred during the fast-paced production environment of the Denver Mint in 1989, an environment where millions of coins flowed through at incredible speed, where each press thundered with relentless repetition, where machinery was constantly monitored but still vulnerable to slight shifts, tiny errors, and fleeting moments of mechanical unpredictability that could give birth to a coin so unusual that it ends up becoming a legend in its own right, sparking debates, inspiring theories, and igniting the imagination of collectors worldwide who begin to ask themselves how such a small and everyday item could turn into something worth as much as luxurious homes, sports cars, yachts, or even full business investments. And as we continue this journey together, we peel back the layers of speculation, analysis, and storytelling surrounding this mythical 1989 D-quarter, imagining the moment when the blank planchet first entered the coining chamber and how the dies that struck it, possibly flawed in microscopic or dramatic ways, could have transferred errors that would not be caught by quality control or early inspection, especially if the error was subtle enough to go unnoticed at the time, but significant enough to stun experts decades later, leading us to consider possibilities such as a rare double denomination strike, where the quarter might have been struck over another coin like a dime or a nickel, creating ghostly outlines, distorted lettering, overlapping devices, or mismatched weight characteristics that make such errors unimaginably valuable. Or maybe the coin suffered from a deep die crack or die break, creating raised lines or retained cud formations that turn the coin into a one-of-kind minting accident. Or perhaps the coin features an elusive off-center strike so perfectly balanced between error and visual appeal that collectors become obsessed with acquiring it, especially if the date and mint mark remain visible despite the dramatic misalignment that gives the quarter an unmistakable appearance. Or maybe we speculate about a broad strike error where the coin expands beyond its usual borders due to the collar failing to engage properly during the strike, pushing the metal outward and creating a stretched, unusual silhouette that makes the coin instantly recognizable as a minting mistake. And as we build upon these layers of potential errors, we also imagine a scenario where multiple errors occurred at the same time or in sequence, stacking together in ways that exponentially increase its rarity. For example, a double strike combined with a rotated die and a clipped planchet edge, making the coin not just rare, but practically alien compared to regular circulation pieces. And collectors know that when several errors stack up in one coin, its rarity and desirability become astronomical because the likelihood of such a perfect storm is so minuscule that the coin becomes the ultimate trophy piece, the kind of artifact that only appears once in several generations. And we also consider the role of transitional or experimental planchets, imagining the remote possibility that the quarter could have been struck on a leftover blank from another year or another metal composition, perhaps even struck on a foreign planchet accidentally fed into the machinery during production, a type of error documented in some rare cases and highly cherished because the mismatch between expected composition and actual metal content creates an anomaly that drastically increases value. And as we stretch our imagination further, we think about the intriguing possibility of extreme die deterioration that might have caused mushy lettering, distorted features, abnormally thick rims, or ghost-like doubling that could be so dramatic and so visually striking that the coin becomes instantly iconic among collectors. especially if the deterioration reached a point where the coin's details look like a surreal blend of melted textures and unexpected shapes, reflecting the moment when the die was long overdue for replacement but still used in the minting process, producing a handful of coins before being retired. And such coins often become incredibly valuable because they serve as snapshots of the exact moment when machinery began to fail, capturing the mechanical history of the mint in metal form. But the story of a coin reaching $16 million does not rely solely on the physical errors alone, because part of its mystique also comes from its scarcity, desirability, mythology, provenance, and the way collectors tell stories about it, building a narrative that transforms the coin into an icon, a symbol of numismatic wonder. A treasure whose aura grows with every auction rumor, private sale whisper, or expert speculation. And as we explore why value could climb this high, we must think about the dynamics of collector psychology, how rarity drives competition, how storytelling magnifies importance, how provenance builds authority, and how the right combination of uniqueness, mystery, authenticity, and demand can cause prices to skyrocket far beyond traditional expectations, especially in a world where wealthy collectors compete intensely to secure the most spectacular pieces for their elite collections, sometimes paying record-breaking sums simply to claim ownership of a coin that no one else in the world can possess. And this naturally leads us to consider how a coin like this could have passed through circulation unnoticed for years, or even decades, perhaps resting in drawers, jars, pockets, or collections without anyone realizing its immense potential, until one day an observant collector notices an odd detail, a strange texture, an unusual strike, or a weight difference that prompts a deeper investigation. And once the truth begins to unfold, experts become involved. Authentication takes place, studies are conducted, comparisons are made, and suddenly the coin's status shifts from overlooked to extraordinary, drawing media attention, collector hype, auction anticipation, and a growing swirl of fascination that pushes its value higher and higher until it reaches the realm of multi-million-dollar lore. And as we build this narrative together, we explore the endless possibilities of what could have happened during the minting process, from misfed planchets to misaligned dies, from double strikes to broad strikes, from incorrect metal compositions to unusual pressure during striking that could have created oddly sharp or oddly shallow details that stand out dramatically against the standard appearance of a 1989 D quarter. And collectors know that even the smallest irregularity, when rare enough, can amplify value exponentially, especially if the error is visually stunning, historically significant, or scientifically fascinating. And so the story continues as we think about things like the exact alignment of the obverse and reverse dies, imagining scenarios where the dies rotated during striking, causing a rotated die error that produces a visually refreshing orientation mismatch that collectors absolutely love, especially when the rotation is extreme enough to be dramatic, but still precise enough to preserve the coin's major details. The next 1986 D quarter dollar USA coin today, as we dive into one of the most unbelievable and captivating stories in modern coin collecting. A story that keeps collectors awake at night, fuels treasure hunters with endless hope, and reminds all of us that sometimes the most ordinary pocket change can hold the most extraordinary secrets. So prepare yourself, because today we're talking about the astonishing case of a 1986 D quarter dollar said to have reached a mind-blowing value of $20 million due to a combination of incredibly rare mint errors, unusual striking conditions, mysterious anomalies, and possibilities that stretch the imagination of even the most experienced numismatists. And as we begin this deep journey into what makes this coin so astonishingly valuable, we welcome all new viewers to the channel and thank our returning audience for being part of a community that appreciates the hidden stories and shocking discoveries behind coins that most people overlook every single day. And as we settle in, let's explore how a piece of metal minted in Denver in 1986 could achieve such an extraordinary valuation. A valuation so high that it becomes the kind of legendary tale that transforms the entire collecting world, starting with the intricate combination of mint errors that are believed to exist on this particular specimen. Because while millions of 1986 D quarters were produced, this one supposedly stands out with a convergence of flaws so extreme and so uniquely layered that it becomes not just rare, but almost mythical, and collectors love nothing more than a coin that defies the odds and demonstrates that perfection isn't always what creates value. In many cases, it's the mistakes that turn an everyday coin into an artifact of incomparable worth. So imagine first the possibility that this 1986 D quarter may have originated from a misaligned die strike so severe that the portrait of Washington appears shifted dramatically toward the rim, creating an off-center effect that alone could bring thousands of dollars on the open market, but combined with additional errors begins to form the foundation of an ultra-rare specimen. And from there, imagine the possibility that the reverse suffered from a late-stage die break, creating massive die cracks running across the eagle's wings like lightning bolts frozen in metal. Cracks so dramatic and visually striking that they instantly capture the eye of any expert. And as if that weren't enough, picture a scenario where the planchet itself, the blank metal disc used to create the coin, was improperly prepared, perhaps composed of a transitional alloy, perhaps containing trace elements not typically found in standard clad quarters, perhaps struck on a leftover planchet intended for a completely different denomination, creating a wrong planchet scenario that collectors lose their minds over, especially when the coin manages to retain clear, bold details despite being struck on something it was never meant to be paired with. And the intrigue deepens when we imagine the possibility of double striking or multiple striking events occurring within milliseconds, leaving ghost images, overlapping details, unusual doubling on the date or lettering, or shadows behind Washington's profile. Phenomena that experienced collectors instantly recognize as extremely valuable because such errors require incredibly rare timing failures at the minting press. And while any single error could push the coin's value upward, it is the idea that this 1986 D quarter combines multiple spectacular errors into one unbelievable coin that drives the mythos behind the $20 million figure. Because in the rarest of cases, a coin with compounded anomalies becomes more than a collectible. It becomes a one-of-a-kind treasure, a museum-grade artifact, a numismatic miracle that sparks bidding wars among collectors who refuse to lose their chance to own something that may never appear again. And as we analyze this hypothetical specimen, imagine also the possibility that it bears rotated dies, with a reverse rotated dramatically compared to the obverse, creating an alignment oddity that further boosts rarity, and perhaps even evidence of a broad strike where the collar failed, allowing the metal to expand wildly beyond its intended boundary, giving the coin an oversized, irregular shape that instantly distinguishes it from normal quarters, and, since errors often overlap in unpredictable ways, imagine an incomplete strike leaving faint missing details near the rim or even missing letters where the pressure failed to fully transfer the design. Features that collectors pay enormous premiums for when combined with other significant anomalies. And deeper still, imagine the possibility of a retained cut, a large raised blister-like area on the coin caused by a piece of the die breaking off, yet still clinging loosely to the die face, producing dramatic distortions in the design, or the possibility of a dramatic feeder finger scrape leaving deep, parallel gouges across the surface, marks that would normally destroy a coin's value, but in extreme mint error cases only serve to enhance the uniqueness of the specimen. And consider also the theoretical chance that the planchet may have been struck through foreign material like cloth, metal shavings, grease, or even a fragment of another planchet, creating abnormal textures, missing details, smooth areas, or distorted impressions that make experts stare in disbelief. And the fascination doesn't end with physical errors alone, because part of what makes this imaginary $20 million 1986 D quarter so captivating is the story surrounding it. The idea that perhaps it escaped the Denver Mint through unusual circumstances, maybe slipping past quality control during a moment of chaos or equipment malfunction, maybe struck during an experimental period or under temporary modifications not thoroughly documented. And collectors love the idea of a coin that shouldn't exist, a coin that somehow survived melting, sorting, bagging, and circulation with all its errors intact, emerging decades later as a discovery so shocking that it rewrites what we believe possible in U.S. coinage. And this is where imagination meets numismatic passion, because so many collectors dream of finding that one extraordinary coin in their spare change, that one rare anomaly that changes their life forever. And stories like this feed that dream, encouraging people to check their pockets, examine their jars of old coins, and search with renewed excitement every time they receive change from store. And while the idea of a 1986 D quarter being worth $20 million is more legend than reality, its value as a story, as an example of how mint errors, rarity, circumstance, and mystery can combine to create an unforgettable narrative, is priceless for the community that thrives on discovery. And this is what makes the world of coin collecting so endlessly thrilling, because every year new finds emerge. Unexpected rarities surface. Coins once thought ordinary reveal hidden secrets. And collectors continue to dream big, hoping to uncover something no one has ever seen before. And so the tale of this incredibly valuable 1986 D quarter serves not just as a story of errors and anomalies, but as a testament to the excitement of searching, the joy of discovery. The next 1997 P quarter dollar USA coin today, as we dive into one of the most unbelievable, mind-bending, and absolutely captivating stories in the entire world of modern coin collecting. A story that has shocked collectors, stunned appraisers, and ignited imaginations everywhere. The tale of the 1997 P quarter dollar that is said to be worth an astonishing $20 million because of a combination of extraordinary mint errors, mysterious production anomalies, improbable mistakes, and a seemingly impossible chain of events that could have allowed such a coin to exist in the first place. So get comfortable as we unravel the layers of intrigue surrounding this legendary coin that has drawn the attention of collectors, historians, numismatists, and enthusiasts from all corners of the world. A coin whose unexpected rise to fame has been propelled by speculation, examination, debate, and fascination. Because when you begin to break down all the peculiarities associated with this unique 1997 P quarter, you start to understand why some individuals believe its value could reach heights that seem completely absurd for an ordinary circulation coin, yet somehow become almost logical when considering the magnitude of the errors, the rarity of the conditions, and the near impossibility of the circumstances needed to create something of such mythical status. And as we explore all the details, all the potential pathways, all the theories about the coin's creation, and all the whispers of unbelievable mint anomalies, we begin to see how a simple piece of clad coinage minted in Philadelphia in 1997 could turn into a centerpiece of discussion, a source of heated collector rivalry, and a spark for endless conversation across the numismatic community. Because the more deeply you explore its possible errors, the clearer it becomes that this quarter stands not just as a coin, but as a symbol of everything unpredictable, astonishing, and enchanting about minting mistakes. Beginning with the foundational claim that this coin contains a layered stack of errors rarely, if ever, observed on a single piece, starting with the idea that the planchet itself may have been a transitional or experimental composition, something that somehow entered the production stream at the wrong time, possibly due to leftover metal from test strikes or improper handling during planchet sorting. And if such a planchet slipped past the metal inspection process, which is normally extremely rigorous but not entirely infallible, then you have the first component of rarity, because a coin on the wrong planchet or a hybrid composition can immediately command massive premiums, especially if the error is verifiable, dramatic, and visually distinct, and if that same planchet happened to be slightly misweighted or struck during a moment when pressure adjustments on the striking press were malfunctioning. You could end up with distortion, uneven strike pressure, incomplete details, warped rims, and off-center design characteristics that would elevate the uniqueness even further. And when you imagine that such a coin not only survived the minting process, but also the standard quality checks that typically reject any coin with significant deviation, it becomes even more astonishing. Because a coin slipping past inspection with major anomalies is like witnessing a shooting star collide with lightning in the middle of a solar eclipse while a meteor passes overhead. It is a circumstance so statistically improbable that collectors cannot help but speculate that this particular quarter might indeed be one of the rarest objects of modern minting. And then add to that the possibility of a double strike or triple strike, where the coin may have been struck multiple times either off-center or within a misaligned collar, causing overlapping design impressions, shadows in the lettering, ghosting behind Washington's bust, or duplicated date elements that create an almost surreal appearance. And the combination of a misplanchet pressure malfunction, and multiple strikes would already place this coin among the most extraordinary errors ever created in modern mint history. But when you consider additional potential features like rotated dies, die breaks, shattered die remnants, or improperly annealed metal that produces color anomalies, you begin to see how the narrative grows into something monumental, especially if all of these events somehow converged into a single miraculous coin, because each error individually would make a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands, but all of them together create a scenario where the value multiplies exponentially in the minds of bidders who recognize the absolute impossibility of such a coin existing through natural mint processes, generating a mythology around it that elevates the coin beyond its physical form and into a realm of legendary artifacts. And when people talk about the 1997 P quarter worth $20 million, they aren't simply talking about metal, they're talking about the staggering collision of errors, mysteries, circumstances, and theories that orbit this coin. Like the whispers that the dies used on the coin may have been briefly replaced during a shift change or during maintenance work when an experimental or damaged die was temporarily placed on the press without proper authorization, leading to a quick series of strikes before the mistake was noticed and corrected. And if even one of those improperly struck coins escaped, it would instantly become one of the most valuable modern errors imaginable, sparking intense debate among experts and endless fascination among collectors. And when you add rumors of misaligned die rotation that cause the obverse and reverse designs to deviate by significant degrees, creating a visually striking twist when flipping the coin, collectors become even more captivated. And then you factor in the possibility of a clipped planchet on top of everything else, where a crescent-shaped chunk of metal is missing because the blank was punched too close to the edge of a metal strip, adding yet another layer of rarity. And you start to see why this coin's legend has grown so enormous, because when a single quarter is said to feature a wrong planchet, a multi-strike, a misaligned die, a rotational error, pressure inconsistencies, potential color anomalies, rim distortion, partial brockage from another coin stuck to the die, overlapping impressions, and the possibility of a reverse design that was not fully seated during striking, the coin becomes a living museum piece of minting chaos, a perfect storm of anomalies, and something that collectors view as not just rare, but nearly miraculous. And when you consider that collectors often pay millions for far less dramatic errors from earlier decades, the concept of a modern 1997 P quarter soaring to hypothetical valuations in the tens of millions becomes less absurd and more a reflection of the numismatic world's passion for impossible stories. Because part of what makes a coin valuable is not simply the error itself, but the narrative, the mythology, the lore, the speculation, and the sense that you're looking at something that should not exist, yet somehow does. And the 1997 P quarter at the center of this story carries exactly that kind of energy, the energy of a coin that defies logic, challenges probability, and captivates everyone who hears about it, leading to endless discussions about how it could have formed, where it might have surfaced, who discovered it, whether it passed through circulation unnoticed for years, whether it was spotted by a sharp-eyed collector, or whether it was kept hidden in a private collection for decades before its existence was revealed to the public, sparking a frenzy of interest and leading buyers to speculate wildly on its worth, creating bidding wars and theoretical valuations that rise into the tens of millions, because once something becomes the pinnacle of rarity, its value stops being measured by the sum of its metal or its basic attributes and instead becomes tied to the emotions of bidding, the desire for ownership, the hunger to possess something that no one else can ever have. And as collectors dive deeper into every microscopic detail, every scratch, every distortion, every engraving anomaly, they fuel the mystique even more, because human imagination is powerful, and the coin becomes less an object and more an icon, a symbol of error-driven fortune. And as all these layers of mystery build upon each other, the coin gains a life of its own. The next 1978 $quarter USA coin today, as we dive into one of the most unbelievable and fascinating stories in modern coin collecting, a tale that captures imagination, excitement, and curiosity as we explore how an ordinary-looking 1978 $quarter could be rumored to reach an unbelievable price tag of $20 million thanks to a combination of extremely rare mint errors, mysterious production anomalies, and unique circumstances that collectors believe could elevate an everyday coin into the realm of priceless numismatic treasure. And as we move deeper into this captivating journey, we'll explore every possible reason, every mistake, every unusual detail, and every hypothetical scenario that could contribute to such an astronomical value, starting from the basic foundation of how U.S. quarters are produced and moving toward the richest possibilities that enthusiasts dream about. Because when a collector hears about a 1978 quarter reaching $20 million, the immediate reaction is disbelief. Yet that disbelief is precisely what makes the story enticing, pulling in viewers and hobbyists who want to know the hidden secrets behind the coin, the errors that fuel speculation, the minting quirks that could turn a forgotten piece of pocket change into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And as we plunge into this world, we imagine the coin beginning its journey at the U.S. Mint in 1978 during a time when millions of quarters were struck under heavy production. Pressure, where dies wore out, machines misaligned, blanks were fed incorrectly, and quality control wasn't as strict as today, making it possible that some unnoticed mistakes slipped through the cracks. And one of the first possibilities often considered is a dramatic off-center strike, where the design might be shifted so far off its intended location that part of the blank remains untouched. And while such errors are valuable, the idea here goes beyond typical off-center impressions. Imagining a strike so extreme, so unusual, that it defies all known examples, maybe combining multiple errors at once, such as an off-center strike on the wrong planchet with rotating dies that leave ghost-like impressions on multiple layers of the metal, while at the same time the coin could have been struck more than once, creating overlapping images that collectors describe as doubled, tripled, or even quadrupled impressions, giving the coin a surreal, almost accidental artwork appearance. And another speculation centers around wrong planchet errors, meaning the quarter might have been struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, a dime, a cent, or even a commemorative blank. And while common wrong planchet errors are valuable, the $20 million scenario imagines something far rarer, such as a 1978 quarter struck on an experimental compositional planchet that was never intended for circulation, maybe a leftover metal blank from a test the mint conducted secretly, or a transitional planchet bridging between the silver era and the copper-nickel era, one that slipped into production unnoticed, giving the coin a hybrid metal identity that would make metallurgical analysis reveal shocking surprises. And some collectors theorize even further, suggesting the possibility of a double denomination error where a quarter's design might have been stamped over another coin entirely, perhaps a half-dollar or a foreign denomination, an accident almost never seen yet. Technically possible if dies were switched incorrectly or blanks were misfed, creating a layered design with hints of 2 or 3 different coins embedded into one piece of metal. And imagine the excitement of discovering faint lettering from a totally different coin beneath the main design of the 1978 Washington quarter. Such a phenomenon would send shockwaves through the numismatic community and immediately place the coin in a legendary category. Another factor that could contribute to the coin's gigantic speculative value is die cap or brockage errors, where a struck coin gets stuck to the die and stamps several subsequent coins with an inverted or distorted image, producing strange, mirror-like impressions. And if our hypothetical $20 million 1978 quarter were created during such an event, it could show a complex combination of backward imagery on one side and partial strike marks on the other, giving the coin an appearance so unique that not even major museums would have comparable reference pieces. And the rarity of such an error in combination with its age and condition could amplify its mythical status far beyond normal numismatic boundaries. And then there are the dramatic possibilities such as a mule error, where the mint accidentally pairs the obverse die of one coin with the reverse die of a completely different coin, something extraordinarily rare and extremely valuable. And in this imagined scenario, the 1978 quarter could feature an unexpected reverse, maybe one belonging to a special mint set coin, a commemorative design, or even a foreign coin die that accidentally found its way onto the press. And since mule errors are among the most valuable errors in the world, even a slight chance of such a combination emerging in 1978 fuels speculation about astronomical worth. And we can take the imagination further by contemplating the striking pressure and the wear on the dies used at the mint that year, because heavy die deterioration could cause dramatic cracks, cuds, and raised metal flaws across the coin's surface. And if those cracks formed in shapes resembling recognizable objects, letters, symbols, or even accidental artwork, collectors might interpret these anomalies as intentional or as historically significant, sparking rumors and escalating desirability. And if this particular 1978 quarter survived in uncirculated condition despite its intense flaws, the idea of it being a one-of-one piece becomes even more plausible, increasing its mythical value. And when collectors discuss extreme valuations, they often refer to provenance, meaning the story behind the coin, who owned it, how it was found, where it was stored, and how it remained hidden for decades before resurfacing. And if this imagined coin emerged from a sealed bankroll untouched since 1978, or from a deceased collector's mysterious private vault, or perhaps from a forgotten box in an old mint employee's estate, the dramatic backstory would help fuel its legend, making it not just a rare error coin, but also a piece of folklore. And the more mysterious the origin, the higher the bidding wars could climb. And then consider the possibility that this quarter might have undergone a partial strike through error, where foreign material interfered with the minting process, such as cloth, grease, wire, or debris, and if that material left behind an impression that created a bizarre, once-in-a-century pattern on the coin's surface, collectors would be stunned by the uniqueness, especially if the pattern preserved perfectly without altering the metal structure in a way that damages the piece. And then we think about die alignment errors, where the obverse and reverse are rotated at unusual angles, and although mild rotations are seen occasionally, a perfect sideways or upside-down rotation is extremely rare and can dramatically increase a coin's desirability. And if this imagined $20 million 1978 quarter displayed an extraordinary rotation combined with another major error, its status would rise even further, stacking rarity upon rarity in a way that numismatic experts rarely encounter. And one must also think about the theoretical possibility that the coin comes from a tiny batch of test strikes made for internal evaluation of the mint, coins that were never meant for circulation. And if somehow one escaped into the world with unusual features or experimental composition, it would be considered priceless, being the only physical evidence of a top-secret minting plan. And such mystery enhances the legend behind the coin, making collectors willing to pay enormous amounts for a once-in-a-lifetime specimen. And this legend grows even more intense when one imagines that even professional graders or advanced collectors might struggle to categorize the coin accurately because it contains multiple overlapping errors combined with rare metal content, unusual die pairings, flawed alignment, partial strike-throughs. The last 1978 $quarter USA coin today, as we dive into one of the most astonishing, mind-blowing, and talked-about stories in the world of rare coins. A story that has captured the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday curious viewers who wonder how something as ordinary as a 1978 $quarter could end up being valued at a staggering $20 million purely because of the unusual, fascinating, and sometimes downright mysterious errors and mistakes that occurred during its creation. And in this deep exploration, we will journey through every possibility, every strange detail, every accidental anomaly, and every potential minting blunder that could elevate an everyday coin into the realm of legendary status, drawing in coin lovers from around the world who dream of stumbling upon that one elusive piece hiding in plain sight, maybe in a drawer, maybe in a pocket, maybe in a forgotten jar of change that hasn't been touched for decades. And as we explore the 1978 quarter, we begin with understanding that although millions were produced, only a tiny handful, maybe even just one, might bear the combination of errors so extraordinary that it becomes worth more than a luxury mansion. And these errors begin from the slightest off-center strike that pushes design elements into odd positions, shifting Washington's portrait slightly to the left or right, stretching the rim unnaturally, warping the denticles, creating visual confusion that collectors adore. Because such displacement demonstrates that something went unexpectedly wrong at the minting press. And then we consider double strikes where the coin accidentally receives a second impact before it leaves the press, leading to ghost images of letters, repeated outlines of Washington's head, overlapping date impressions, and doubled feathers on the eagle's wings. Each doubling adding a new layer of wonder, because the more dramatic the duplication, the more valuable the coin may become, especially when the doubling is clear, bold, and unmistakable. And then we explore the dramatic broad strike error, which happens when the coin is struck without the collar properly in place, causing the coin to spread out wider than normal, creating a smooth rim without the typical reeded edges, making the coin appear like a strange misshapen piece that never should have entered circulation in the first place. And next we explore clipped planchets where the metal blank is partially cut off in a crescent shape before the coin is struck, leaving a distinctive curved missing piece that makes the quarter instantly eye-catching. And while clipped planchets themselves are valuable, the combination of multiple errors on a single coin, like a clipped planchet plus a double strike plus misalignment, could create an extraordinary rarity that defies explanation. And then we go deeper into transitional errors, imagining the possibility that the quarter could have been struck on the wrong metal planchet altogether, perhaps mistakenly using a leftover blank intended for a foreign coin or even a different U.S. denomination. And when a quarter is struck on a copper-nickel planchet weighing either more or less than its standard value, collectors become extremely interested. But when the coin is struck on a completely different metal, like a silver planchet or an experimental alloy, its rarity multiplies astronomically, and these possibilities ignite the imagination of anyone fascinated with minting history, because such mistakes typically never leave the mint unless something truly unusual occurred. And now we consider the dramatic die crack errors where the minting die used to strike the coin begins to fracture or split, creating raised lines or jagged pathways across the coin surface that look like lightning bolts or branching roots growing across Washington's portrait or the eagle's detailed feathers. And depending on the severity of the crack, collectors may interpret it as a major error that dramatically increases the coin's desirability. And then we explore the realm of die breaks, cuds, and raised blobs of extra metal that appear when a portion of the die completely breaks off, resulting in blank, blob-like shapes on the rim or interior design where detail should exist. And these cuds can transform the appearance of the coin so drastically that the piece becomes instantly recognizable as a rare mint mishap. And now we step into even stranger territory by considering rotated dies where the obverse and reverse are misaligned, meaning when you flip the coin, the eagle appears rotated from its expected position, sometimes by 30 degrees, 90 degrees, or even a full upside-down rotation, which is a rare and visually striking error that attracts serious numismatic attention. And the more extreme the rotation, the more jaw-dropping the value might become, especially if paired with other oddities. And speaking of oddities, we also imagine the possibility of missing design elements, such as a faint or completely absent mint mark, a missing liberty, a fading "In God We Trust," or an unusually weak strike where details appear half-melted or ghost-like, giving the coin an eerie and mysterious visual presence. And these weak strikes often occur when the pressure was not correctly applied or the dies were worn down far more than they should have been, allowing for inconsistencies that collectors love to analyze. And then there's the possibility of a mule error where the obverse die of the 1978 quarter is accidentally paired with the reverse die of another denomination entirely, such as a dime or a dollar, creating a mismatched coin that should never exist and would instantly become one of the rarest U.S. coins in history if such a combination were ever discovered. And the thought of a mule error existing for the 1978 quarter excites enthusiasts worldwide, because mule errors are among the most valuable and desirable mistakes in the entire realm of numismatics. And now we explore the more microscopic anomalies like die polish lines, planchet striations, lamination errors where the metal peels or flakes due to impurities, and off-metal flakes embedding into the coin's surface. Each strange imperfection adding character and intrigue that can elevate the coin beyond ordinary levels of rarity. And then we imagine a universe where a perfect storm of mistakes occurred simultaneously during the minting of one particular 1978 quarter, combining an off-center strike with a double strike, a die crack, a missing mint mark, a clipped planchet, and even an incorrect metal composition, all layered together to create a practically impossible specimen so unique that collectors would be willing to pay astronomical amounts to own it. And the mere possibility that such a coin might exist drives the excitement behind the $20 million valuation, because collectors know that rarity does not simply come from age, but from the convergence of anomalies so extraordinary that they border on miraculous. And the emotional value attached to such a coin grows as collectors imagine its journey from the mint to the world, passing through hands unaware of its worth, dropping into pockets drawers, or cash registers, and perhaps lying forgotten somewhere until someone finally recognizes the treasure staring back at them. And the mystery deepens as we consider the stories behind coins that accidentally escape the mint with. Extreme errors, because usually such pieces are caught by inspectors or melted down to prevent circulation. But occasionally one coin sneaks through, slipping past machinery and human oversight, becoming a tiny metal miracle destined for fame decades later. And another layer of fascination comes from studying the production environment of 1978, a time when machinery wear, die fatigue, and planchet inconsistencies were not uncommon, meaning small errors frequently occurred, but the type of colossal, multi-layered error that could push a quarter's value to $20 million would require a combination of rare conditions aligning perfectly, and collectors love imagining what might have caused such unique circumstances. Perhaps a malfunctioning press, an exhausted worker, a damaged die reused by mistake, or an experimental planchet accidentally fed into the wrong coining machine. And as we think about the magnitude of such errors, we realize that rarity is not only about physical mistakes, but also historical significance. Because a 1978 quarter that embodies these extraordinary anomalies becomes a physical piece of minting history, a snapshot of an event so unlikely that the coin becomes priceless. And this fuels the feverish excitement among those who handle pocket change carefully, inspecting every detail, checking dates, edges, and surfaces, hoping to be the lucky person who finds